Welcome back to the Driveway Beers podcast with Mike and Alex. As always, we appreciate you listening. Please rate us on all the podcast platforms. Like, subscribe, comment, share wherever else you're listening, and enjoy the show. All right, welcome back to another episode. Want to always thank you for coming back. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you could stop the episode right now. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate us on the star system. Or if it allows you, please leave a comment, note, review, whatever you want. 1 star works, but if you can give us 5, that'd be great. We do have a new sponsor for this show. I met this individual actually over the internet. It was almost like how I met my wife. Except we weren't dating.
Right.
I saw this guy's Instagram videos. And he's a real estate agent. And it made me reach out to him because, look, I've been saying this. We don't know where to put our money. Like, I literally put money into a CD and just parked it there for 9 months because I didn't know what else to do.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, we've mentioned on here, my wife and I, we sold a couple properties. Properties like we're fucking the property brothers here. I had bought a condo. I moved in with my wife. We just kept the condo as a rental. Then when my wife and I got married, we bought a house. And then when we moved into this house, we kept that house. So then we had 2 rentals, right? Okay. That's how we ended up with properties. Rentals were a good source of income, but they were a pain in the butt. So we ended up selling them. One we kind of had to, and I think we've gone over that with the short sale and everything.
Yeah.
And then the other one we got rid of because the market was good. Apparently if we waited, it would have been better, but that's fine. We still got money out of it. But we had been looking to get back in the real estate market. And I was like, you know, I see this guy posting videos all the time, but a lot of times he wasn't talking about real estate. He was just talking about life in general. And he just seemed like a really approachable person. So I reached out to him. And I was like, hey, man, I'd love to just get together with you and talk about real estate or what's possible.
Yeah.
And we started talking and talking. He noticed. I obviously messaged him with the podcast account. And he was like, hey, why don't you come on by? I was like, cool. So I went up to his office and we were chatting. And he ended up sponsoring the podcast. And that's how we came about to sponsoring it. But that was about, I'd say, an hour into the conversation. Mm-hmm. I just really got a good personal feeling from this guy where he's going to treat my money like it's his money. And I've always said that about a real estate agent. You don't want a real estate agent that's just in it to push numbers. You know, because they don't get me wrong. Any salesperson, they get bonuses for numbers, right? With the top brass and all this other stuff, you get awards if you're the top selling real estate agent in the area and some other things. But when you talk to a real estate agent, you want them to represent you. You want them to treat this transaction, if it's a personal transaction for them, and that they're going to get you the best deal, even if it costs them money. And I got every indication that Adam Chubbuck from Team Alpha Charlie of Douglas Realty in Pasadena, Maryland, was going to do that with my money. And so we came up with an agreement that he would sponsor the show for the next 6 months, and we'll talk about it 6 months down the road. But we always said, look, we're never just going to accept any sponsor for the show. We were always going to vet the sponsors. Unless
it's Pfizer.
Well, no, I'll sell my soul for Pfizer if they've given us the bag. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, if I start pushing the RSV vaccine,
you'll know
that
there's a check with a bunch of zeros on it.
Yeah. Like that bank account just got fat from Pfizer. Okay. And, not opposed to selling the soul a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Merck. Look, why has it got to be Pfizer? Merck.
Novo Nordisk.
No, yeah.
Moderna.
Sure. Any of
Eli Lilly.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a bunch we're missing.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Except
Pharma Bro.
Yeah. Can't have him. Although enough money. What, the Sacklers? Can we get some of that?
Everyone has a price.
Are they still doing that?
Yeah,
Are they still selling some drugs?
Oh, their thing got restructured.
Did it?
Yeah.
Ooh, wonder if they
It
have
was
any,
supposed to be restructured. I don't know. But
wonder if they have an advertising budget. Brought to you by Purdue Pharma. We really would have gone down
yeah.
with the morals for that.
Brought to you by ISIS and Purdue Pharma.
You think ISIS advertises?
I mean, they
And just not around here, probably.
They have a social media team.
Right, that's true. It's better than most. Again, it's Adam Chubbuck, Team Alpha Charlie of Douglas Realty. He's out there on 8221 Ritchie Highway, Pasadena, Maryland. Their information is on our website. Their website is tacmd.com, so it's tacmd.com. Phone number is 443-457-9524. I'm telling you, if you go talk to Adam, he's going to do what's best for you. I really got that feeling from him.
And it's weird because you don't like most people.
I hate everybody. Yeah. I mean, I literally just yelled at a friend tonight. Like it brewed up for 2 years inside of me, but it came out tonight. Like I couldn't take it anymore. So if I'm saying good things about Adam, then he's probably a good guy. But just go talk to him yourself. I feel like some real estate agents, they'll just say you want like a 3-bedroom house in Glen Burnie. They're not going to talk to you because they know the price isn't going to be that high. Adam will talk to everybody. He was literally out on a waterfront property in Pasadena for $800,000. I think it was listed for $850,000. In his own video, he said it's probably a bit overpriced.
Oh wow!
Now I don't know if he was a sales agent,
Yeah.
but as a buyer, he's not going to let you buy that house for list price
Yeah.
because he thinks it's overpriced.
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about. When you go to an agent,
And you know that's going to hit him.
right. He's going to lose money on that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't put in a full price offer, he's not going to get paid as much on the back end. And that's what I'm saying. Like you want someone, when you're a buyer, especially, you want someone who's looking out for you and your pocketbook. It's your money. You know, like J.G. Wentworth, it's your money. You want it now. Your money, you don't want to give it all up. So that's why, like, I always look for people that I have a personal connection with first, business relationship with second, as long as they're good. I've gone down the road of friendship, real estate agent. That didn't work out. But anyway, so Adam Chubbuck, Team Alpha Charlie, Douglas Realty, thank you for sponsoring the show. Looking forward to a great 6 months. Another thing that I saw on social media, and I swear to God, it's been on my Facebook videos, Instagram videos. Even Twitter doesn't do video much, so I'm not going to say Twitter videos, but let's say Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
When you're scrolling through,
Twitter, but it's not the primary.
they're trying.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm not going to Twitter for long form videos, right?
No.
When I go to Facebook, though, like, I swear it's been like the people that like, I guess what Twitter's good for is when they repost the TikToks because they're shorter, right?
Yeah.
All the, like, these TikToks, and I don't know if it's just because this is what I'm getting fed, but it's like all of a sudden Gen X seems to be the topic for comedians, TikTokers, Facebook comedians, stand-up comedians that just post a little bit of the show. And, like, it's strange to me because Gen X used to be kind of the butt of a lot of jokes.
Yeah, I remember an episode of The Simpsons where I guess it was during the .com burst, and I guess either Bart or Homer had gotten involved with this .com company, and they were paying everyone in stock. So as he walked out, he's like, Bart said, he had this guy's ponytail. He's like, I cut that Gen X loser's ponytail off. And he says another Vietnam would toughen them up a little bit. And it's like, they didn't have their war, which they actually did.
Gen X got it.
Yeah, Gulf War. Older, Gen X.
Afghanistan,
Iraq, that sort of stuff. But, the thing is, like, they are out there, and I don't... there's this one I thought it's the kid's young, so he's probably, and we can go over like the different ages of all these generations, but the kid that's doing the video, it's called Gen X Talks. So it's this kid who's probably like a Gen Z type, like he's he's in high school, probably, maybe first year of college, goes and asks his dad questions. And his dad's like, answers, like the kid asks a question, then the dad's like, well, the reason you do that is because you guys are a bunch of fucking dumbasses and blah, 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 blah. And the kid tries to respond to him, and then the dad, and the dad's always like fixing something, when this happens. That's one of them. There's this other guy, Gen X something. He's this guy that has a long beard, and he talks about, he has a higher pitched voice, but he goes and talks about, like, someone will do something stupid, and he goes, he'll I hope I'm never on the roads with you, and goes, and he's kind of funny. But there are out there a lot, like, it's, talking about how they used to drink out of garden hoses and stuff like that.
Well, it's weird. It's like they years ago they would make fun of Gen X.
Yeah.
Or I guess they call them Xennials. But now it's like almost like Gen X is revered.
Yeah.
It's almost like, so the World War II generation was called the silent generation, or the greatest generation, right?
Right. So the silent generation, so the silent generation was kind of between the boomers and, so it's when you look at the way these years are structured, these generations are structured, they kind of overlap a little bit. Like it's not like the greatest generation raised everyone every boomer. There's some Gen X people that probably have greatest, or they call them GI generation parents.
So mine were boomers, 40 late 40s, 46 and 48.
Yeah,
that's boomers.
Yeah, my parents were 47, 49.
Okay, so they were boomers.
Yeah.
So you're saying the generation after that was the silent generation?
The generation between, so the generation that would have fought in the Korean War.
50s.
Yeah, so that was born in the, like, say, 1930s. So
30s.
Too young for World War II.
Gotcha.
And then fought in the Korean War.
Okay.
That was, and some in Vietnam, that was considered the silent generation. The GI generation, or greatest generation, their birth cohort this is a highly technical term.
So early 1900s, because they fought in World War. No, so they were
World War
1920s.
Yeah,
they were the baby boom after World War I.
Correct.
Essentially.
Yeah. So it's like 26 to 26 to I forget what the years were. I'm pulling it up right now.
I think you could probably even go back to like 1919, 1920, because that's when my grandparents were born.
Yes.
And my grandfather was in World War II.
Yeah, silence 28 to 45. That's when they were born.
28 to 45,
Yeah.
okay.
And then boomers are 46 to 64. So they kind of end, but the
Right.
silent didn't raise the boomers, because then you'd have a 45-year-old having a kid born in 1946.
Right.
Not happening. So it's almost like for there's like kind of, if the silent rate, would have been parents of Gen X. Some boomers are parents of Gen X, right? And then millennials, which according to this thing is 81 to 96.
So what's before millennial? Gen X?
Gen X.
So what's a Xennial?
A Xennial is kind of like us.
So, because I'm 79.
Right, so am I. So the thing, which they call fuzzy generations.
Okay.
So the fuzzy generations would be your Xennials, and they are people who were born. So essentially, it all has to do with like lived experience and stuff like that. So we were born and spent some of our childhood, our early childhood, not even too early, like into high school, in the analog time. And then we're around for late high school and college with digital.
So internet and before internet, essentially. Mm-hmm. Now, video games, we counting that digital? Because Nintendo was like when I was second, third grade.
Yeah.
So that was early. Shoot, that was probably 85.
Yeah. So we're talking more like.
Internet was what, 90 something?
Yeah. So like You've Got Mail was probably 94, 95, somewhere in that area.
Yeah. So you're right though. So we grew up without.
Right.
Like generation, you had to go outside and play.
Yeah.
You drank from the garden hose. Like you got some of the toughness, but then you also had to figure out the technology.
Yes.
That basically, from the way one person put it was, we're basically the gateway, the interpreters from the older generations to the newer ones because we had to live in both worlds.
Yeah. And I know some older Gen X, because Gen X starts 65.
Yeah, my brother was 73.
Yeah.
And so he got the internet when in his 20s, I think, roughly, like late teens, early 20s.
Yes, and he would have been old enough to fight to fight in the first Gulf War,
right?
At 73.
Yep.
So like a friend of mine was born. I think he was born in 66. So he's super young or super old Gen X, terrible with computers, and all that stuff, but he actually did fight in the Gulf War, first Gulf War. So, but then you have older Gen X, like say if you go by this 1980, who would have fought in the second Gulf War in Iraq and Afghanistan.
That'd make him a young Gen X, wouldn't it?
That would be a very young Gen X, yeah.
Because 81's cut off.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say 82, 83, but whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, we have some friends who were born in 84 and say that they're
I would
Gen
say,
X.
So, yeah, I think a lot of people we know.
Yeah, but it's and the problem is so many people, the millennials have such a bad reputation. Mm-hmm. But what I find really funny is that like Gen X loves to shit on the millennials. I was like, wait, y'all raised those motherfuckers. They're your kids.
Like, did they though?
Some of them, the older ones.
Or was it the 60s that raised the millennials?
Yeah.
Who raised like the teenagers now?
The teenagers now are, for the most part, Gen X, younger Gen X.
Mm-hmm. And millennials.
And millennials are more this next one, which is Gen Z.
Okay. The fucked up, because the kids now are fucked up.
Right. So our oldest fall into Gen Z.
Okay.
Our youngest are called alphas. But they're too little to have any sort of,
right.
But Gen Z, their entire life has been digital.
Right.
Some of these kids have Facebook pages, which I think is kind of sick, that their mothers created or fathers created for them prior to them being born. So their Facebook page is older than they are. So they're putting like, oh, this is little baby Jalen's Facebook page, and it's like, I think the kid doesn't have a choice.
Yeah, but part of it is they're trying to get the username locked down.
I guess.
For me, I created Gmails for the two girls, so I could make sure I could get their first and last name in it. Now that's hard. My last name's not exactly the most common.
You're not Alex Smith,
right? If I was, I'd be a rich man. If I was the quarterback,
yeah.
Anyway,
unless you're the poor Alex Smith, which I'm sure there's one of them.
There are probably a lot of them, a lot more of them than there are him. But the funny thing was so whereas before Gen X used to get made fun of, in a lot of these videos, Gen X is like revered.
Oh yeah,
it's like someone was like, "Where's Gen?" Like there was this one girl who did a TikTok. She's like, "Where's Gen X in all of this? Why aren't they doing anything?" Yeah. And then there's like the
yeah,
and then there's like 7 responses of, "Oh, you don't want that."
Yeah, yeah,
like they will cut you.
Yeah,
it's like the last generation that remembers physical violence.
Yeah.
So
getting punched in the mouth was a
right. That
realistic possibility.
It was like the one lady, and she was a younger girl. She was like, "Oh, you don't want to deal with them because they were the last generation that had to talk shit to someone's face with the risk of being punched in the face."
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like that kind of like that's where I was seeing a lot of it going.
Yeah.
Like it was the weird turn because it used to be Gen X used to get made fun of for being slackers and lazy,
listless,
and now it's purpose. Like, and now apparently we turned into the don't fuck with us generation. Like we were the fuck around find out generation.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I mean, we turned out all right. Apparently, that's not that bad. But it's also partially true though.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that are our age who have a very low tolerance for the bullshit that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think with the older generation, there's a little bit more acceptance of it. And a little bit after us, there's some acceptance of it. Where they actually like feed into this shit. And our generation's like, what the hell is going on here?
Well, and that's the thing. So all of these, the people who are in charge are pretty much, when a lot of this stuff started, when the safe spaces started, when all this crap started, the trigger warnings, all this nonsense was all kind of propagated and put into place by the boomers.
Right. The end of the boomers right before X.
All the ones that were the counterculture types. So a lot of that stuff was there, and it's funny because the boomers love to shit on, especially millennials. Mm-hmm. Gen X, we shit on millennials too, but I think we kind of shit on everybody. But
we do, except for the greatest generation.
Yeah,
I think Gen X and the greatest generation. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to compare us to the generation that fought World War II. Not happening, right?
Yeah,
but the greatest generation were our grandparents. Mm-hmm. And they say mannerisms kind of skip a generation, or they skip like grandparent to grandkid.
Yep.
Like mannerisms and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like don't worry, you get a lot from your parents, but you get your mannerisms and stuff from your grandparents.
And it makes sense because if you think about it, everyone kind of, who's the man when you're a kid? The man is people your parents' age, right? So you buck the man. Well, the man bucked somebody when they were kids, and who was that? People who were your grandparents' age. So it kind of makes sense if it's a 0 or a 1, and the parents are a 1, and you buck them and you go to 0. Well, the grandparents were the 0 too, right? Because they keep bucking back and forth. So it does kind of make sense that if you're watching some of the stuff that people of our parents' generation did, you're like, oh God, like that's just and then you do assume some of those, and I think also when you're a little kid, like, your parents raise you, your grandparents spoil you.
Right.
So you get to have fun with your grandparents and, and they're the ones that are buying you treats and ice cream and, having fun, because it's all fun with the grandparents.
Right. And you kind of end up wanting to emulate the grandparents. Mm-hmm. Because you're right. You're trying to buck your parents because they're the ones always telling you what to do and shit.
Oh, yeah.
But you get to see the mannerisms of your grandparents.
Yeah.
Like, I was very aware of my grandfather and the way he just went about business. Mm-hmm. Or not even business, just people in general.
Yeah.
Very responsible, looked out for other people. Quiet, though.
Yeah.
Did more than he talked.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Same with my grandmother. My grandmother was, more of, she wasn't an overly loving grandmother, but she loved her grandkids.
Yeah.
But I always thought she was tough as nails.
Yeah.
But I mean, don't get me wrong. My mom and my aunts told me she was tough as nails too. Yeah. Like don't fuck around with her.
Right.
She will fuck you up.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather was just revered as the elder statesman, mm-hmm. and just always treated people well, right?
Yeah.
In fact, my dad probably took more of his life lessons from my mother's father, the grandfather I'm talking about, mm-hmm. than the fuckhole that was my dad's dad, who we didn't talk to.
Right.
So, but again, that was a World War II fighter, a guy in the Navy, was on ships in the Navy in the mm-hmm. Pacific and all this other. So our generation was probably the last generation to have the greatest generation as grandparents.
Yeah.
The millennials had the early start of either the silent or the boomers as their grandparents, who were kind of fuck ups.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like the generation that fought, and the greatest generation, I believe, fought parts of Korea too.
Yeah. So some of them fought both.
Mm-hmm.
There were some people that were, like Robin, I think it was Robin Olds. Robin Olds fought, who's a U.S. Air Force ace, fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. So, now granted, when he was flying F-4s in Vietnam, he was a colonel, and when he was flying P-51s in Vietnam, he was a butter bar, a second lieutenant. Right. But still, his career spanned 3 big wars.
Yeah, and you got to imagine, those 3 were only 20 years apart.
Yeah.
Well, Vietnam was 70s, right? So World War II ended 45?
World War II ended 45. Korea started in 1950.
Right. So those were fairly close.
And then Vietnam doesn't have a definitive start, but it the French were fighting it in the 1950s, and in the early 60s under Kennedy, the U.S. advisors started going there and started ramping up under Johnson. So, 1965 in that area, and that's when I forget when Gulf of Tonkin resolution was, but that's kind of when the official kickoff was.
Yeah. So but that's how you get one generation fighting in all three wars.
Oh yeah.
So they were definitely battle hardened.
Oh yeah.
Like they had seen some shit. Mm-hmm. And then it's funny because our generation has, with the Gulf Wars, mm-hmm. which I'm trying to think. 80s? Was there really? That was the Cold War.
So there
were some. So
the 80s, there wasn't there were some dust ups. You had what was it called? Panama,
Balkans,
Grenada. The Balkans were in the 90s
yeah.
between that was Bill Clinton. But yeah, you had
that was some grimy shit too.
Everyone was so soured from Vietnam that during the 80s there was a big drawdown of U.S. forces. It was the big embarrassment was when they tried to rescue the hostages in Iran.
That was late 70s.
Yeah, so Jimmy Carter kind of got some egg on his face from that one.
80, they handed him over after Reagan got elected.
Yeah. So
that was a fucking thing.
There was there's kind of that, what they call it, perestroika with the opening of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact countries to more warm relations, and then after that, Berlin Wall fell in 1989. Gulf War I starts in 1991. Early 91 is when the air war started. So,
yeah, and I guess all of that to say, Gen X is probably the last generation to kind of get some of that. Not only the lessons, but some of the battle hardening from. They got the lessons and demeanor from the Greatest Generation, and they got battle hardened in the 90s.
Yeah,
and even 2000s a little bit.
And young Gen X, Gen Xers like us, or Zennials, if you'd rather, were only 21, 22 years old for 9/11. So those combat operations started in Afghanistan in 2002.
Right.
So really, and then from 2002 until 2021, we were in constant combat operations somewhere in the Middle East.
Yep.
It would speed up or slow down, but it was constant. So, that's kind of where that's where their hardening came from. So, and now there are a lot of millennials that fought. No Zennials that fought. No Gen Z is too young. Because I think I'll look up and see when they're...
Well, the funny part is that you can tell which ones fought and which ones didn't.
Yeah.
Because their attitudes are completely different.
Yep.
I'm just trying, the way... I find it odd, though, the way Gen X is now talked about. Just because, like I said before it was made fun of all the time. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden... And it seems like just now, in the last, 6 months, it's revered and scared of other generations. Some generations well, that's a good generation right there, good people. And the younger generations are oh, fuck them, we can take them in the other generation. And then the other, it's if all these generations are talking back and forth, and Gen X is quiet.
Yeah.
And someone said, Gen X is lost because they don't want to be found.
Yeah.
They don't want to be a part of any of your shit.
Yeah.
They don't want to have anything to do with your shenanigans.
Mm-hmm. It's they don't want to deal with the millennials and Gen Z's shenanigans. They don't want any part of the boomers' bullshit. So it's kind of, and then there's a real funny meme, another one, where it's Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. And there's a thing over Luke Skywalker, and it says millennials. And then Darth Vader, it says boomers. And then there's the frame below, it's Han Solo, and he's just kind of hey! It's Gen X.
Right.
So, above the fray, or not even involved in the fray, or not caring about the fray.
Pretty much.
Well,
I think it's also like it's the generation that also it's like almost kind of come to realize that no matter what anybody does, the shit's going to stay the same.
Yeah.
So what the fuck are we getting all worked up for?
Yeah. It's like, and the thing is, like, you can, and like the translator speaks both languages. Drank out of garden hoses, played in the woods, rode bikes around like the boomers did when they were kids. Childhood between the two is probably, what were the big differences? My mom didn't have a TV in her house. Well, they probably did. They had some money. My dad didn't. They had one telephone on landline came into the kitchen.
Yep.
So we had a couple of landline phones throughout the house, and maybe 3 televisions in the house.
So we even had like the cordless phone.
Yeah,
with the voicemail, the voice machine, or the what was it actually called?
Answering machine.
Answering machine. Jesus, wow. You had the answering machine with the tape inside.
Yeah.
You had to press it.
And they had a digital one.
Or if you deleted it, you couldn't get it back.
Yeah.
It was gone forever.
Yep.
Which is why, for me, like, when we had talked about, like, our favorite Christmas movies, that's why 8-Bit Christmas hits hard.
Oh, I love it.
Because it just brings me back to those times. And they were sure to hit on a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was funny for me because, like, my kids are watching it going, like, when the guy answered the phone on the wall, they're like, what's that? Like, it's a phone.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean it's a phone?
So, my wife's parents had it forever, was a landline telephone with a cord in the kitchen. It was like a 20-foot cord, right? And my kids, like, maybe just the 2 older ones. I think the youngest one didn't really notice, but I know the oldest one was like, what's that? So we call people on it. So he could, like, talk to them on a landline phone. He thought it was the wildest thing. It would kind of like be us, like, if someone put up in, like, a, 55 Chevy. Like, oh, that's cool, Like...
That's another thing we kind of grew up with both of. We grew up with old school mechanical cars. Mm-hmm. And these high-tech cars.
Yeah.
And these kids today, like, if you put the 57 Chevy in front of them, they might think it looks cool.
They couldn't even start it.
But they wouldn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Was it the millennial anti-theft device?
The stick shift.
Manual transmission.
Like, there's like that, it's the wheel cover for Jeeps. And it's got the 5-speed manual tree on it. Mm-hmm. And it says millennial anti-theft device. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hilarious. Like, and the funny thing is, a lot of people in our generation are going to be looking for those cars as our kids grow up. Mm-hmm. Because the other thing that stick shift is good for is keep kids off the phone.
Yeah.
You can't be on the phone if you got to have your hand on the stick shift, your right hand on the stick shift.
Yeah.
And your left hand's got to be on the wheel. And your 2 feet have got to be working gears. You have no extra limbs to be working a phone.
Right. It takes your full your full concentration to operate that vehicle.
Yep. And so the first car I get my kid, and luckily, they still make them. Mm-hmm. Now you got to be willing to buy what they make, but like you can get a Mazda 6 with a 6-speed. You can get a Honda Accord 4-door with a 6-speed. You can't get an SUV. Not a lot of SUVs come with them.
Yeah. So I never liked manual SUVs because the shifter's like 3 feet long.
Somewhat, like, so those older ones are, but yeah. Like I remember BMW made an X5 with a manual, and it was a short gate, mm-hmm. or it was a shorty. It was like a regular sedan one. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I could ever buy my kid a manual BMW because it would probably break in 10 seconds. But
yeah, owning an out of warranty BMW and then letting a child drive is probably a bad idea.
So I'm probably going to get a four-door Honda Accord.
Yeah,
with a manual in it.
And then she never gets to drive because you're out having fun in it.
Probably. She'll probably end up drive. Know what she's going to drive? She's going to drive that old fucking Yukon.
Yeah, you're flying down, what is it, like St. Margaret's Road, rowing the gears.
She's going to get the Tony Maselli special. Like, I don't know. Do you remember that episode? Like, it was Who's the Boss?
Yeah.
The episode when Tony gets her, like, it was a yellow taxi cab. It was like the 70s Crown Vic. Mm-hmm. So it was the box. And he put, like, 20 reflectors around the outside of it, and that was her first car. I mean, that's what you give your kids. You give them a shit box, and they'll have great stories to tell about it.
Yeah.
I mean, problem now, what are you going to do? Give your kid a Tesla?
Yeah,
a 10-year-old Tesla with all the bells and whistles in it. Fuck no.
No. They'll have some piece of crap like I had. So
speaking of the Yukon, getting it back.
I mean, I just noticed it was gone.
Yeah. So I took it in this week. We put a new computer in it.
Okay.
The mechanic couldn't get in the computer to update it or do anything to it. And I took him for a ride. Like, he was like, man, I can't make it do what you're talking about. So I took him for a ride. I took him on a 30-minute ride. He goes, just drive normally. He goes, doesn't matter how long we go for. Just go. I wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. I tried everything I could to make it do it. Of course, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, of course not.
But when it did something similar, he had it plugged in. He's like, it's the torque converter locking and unlocking. So that's what I'm feeling. So if it's unlocking and locking multiple times like that, it's probably a solenoid. Mm-hmm. Or it could be just the torque converter going bad.
Yeah.
But it's not the transmission, and it's not the engine. So replacing it, if I have to replace the torque converter, $1,000 job with labor. Yeah. Because you got to remove the transmission to do it. Mm-hmm. Which I am having some work done to it since it's there. Because outside of the computer, he's not even charging me for it because it was already programmed and everything. It's going to cost me, I think, $1,400 total for some labor to figure out some stuff. They redid the ground wires for me to fix any electronic things going on. So it was ground wires, the PCU or PCM. They're redoing the steering shaft, the upper intermediate shaft, and the shaft bearing to get rid of the little jiggle in the steering wheel. And then one of the things that we knew was going to need to be done originally when I bought it was the oil pan gasket. Okay. The problem with the oil pan gasket on this is you have to drop the drivetrain or the drive shaft to do it.
But if you're doing the transmission, is it the one to the front transfer case? Is it that drive shaft?
It's the front one.
Yeah, because it wouldn't make sense to be the rear one because that's coming out the back.
So they're going to do that. They're going to replace the oil pan gasket and the oil pickup tube O-ring. Mm-hmm. So the oil pressure should get back up to normal. Not that it was horrible. It was just a little low. He said there might be a little bit of a leak at the rear main seal. Mm-hmm. He goes, but most of the leak looked like it was coming from the oil pan gasket, and he won't know if it's the rear main seal until they redo the gasket, wipe it clean, and I take it back in for the next oil change in like 6 months, and he'll check it again. Yeah. And he said if it's leaking then we'll do it. It's not a horrible job to do. You do have to detach the transmission, but he goes, it's not a horrible job in that truck. Mm-hmm. So I might have to put like another $600 into it. Okay. But as of right now, I'm $12,000 into it. Plus this $1,400. So that's $13,400.
I have told. This is funny. I'm on this Facebook group. It's like a dad's Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And whenever people come on there and say, hey, I want to buy a full-size SUV, what should I get? And I always go in there and I say, early 2000s GMT 800. And I was like, my buddy is into one for X amount of money. The cost of parts is so cheap. I said, and if you need the tech, throw a CarPlay or Android Auto head unit in, and you're good to go. Yeah. And if I had to buy a car right now, like say I had to replace my Sienna, early 2000s GMT 800. I get in a giant fight with my wife. Yeah. Which I find funny, and this is kind of unrelated to either topic. In a lot of families, major purchase decisions are driven by the wife, the female. Mm-hmm. Female head of household. And I'm looking at that, and I can't speak for other people. I know a lot more about cars than my wife does. Right. I have forgotten more about cars than she will ever know. My pinky finger contains more knowledge about vehicles than she will ever know. But she would complain and, I don't want an old car. I don't want a car with 100,000 miles on it. That's too... Like, you seem to understand, like, if I go out and find... If I... Say I went out and I found a Toyota Tundra with 100,000 miles on it and they were selling it for like $15,000, I'm snatching it up. Because that's a steal. Like, it doesn't mean what... Because they just hear what their dad said, and that actually does kind of bring this back in to what the baby boomer dad said. And back when they were young, a car with 100,000 miles on it was a bomb. You didn't want that. You didn't want that car. A car that had over 50,000 miles, it was too old. Well, now, especially a Toyota, hell. But I have a Sienna. It's going to last forever.
Right.
So that car's going to outlive me.
Well, and it's funny because with this Yukon, now it's an 04. I think if I were going to do it again, I might look for an 05 or 06.
Right.
Just because they did the electronic fans for cooling, which were cooled a little bit better, right? It's not a big difference. I guess there's a couple other small differences, but I definitely... 04, they made the bigger changes from the 03. Mm-hmm. And then 05, 06, they made some minor changes. So if you're going to get one, 04 is fine. 05, 06 are where the better ones are.
And then 07 changes generation.
It changes the body style,
yeah,
but apparently not the engine setup. They didn't do displacement on demand then. Mm-hmm. And the 07s. And maybe the 08s.
Yeah.
But 09 they did. And those are the ones you want to avoid.
Well, 09 was also... So in 2009... GM, a lot of other manufacturers went all in on small cars because 09 was big time fuel prices were high. GM stuck with the trucks, ended up declaring bankruptcy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Their answer to that was AFM or active fuel management.
Right. Which, displacement on demand. Same thing.
Crap. But there are, for all of the, whether it's displacement on demand, AFM, there are delete kits you can get that delete it.
So there's delete kits, there's tunes that can delete it, but then there's also an actual way, like a mechanical way to delete it. And all the mechanics say to do the mechanical way, it costs more, but in the long run, you're better off.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. I'll even say a base Yukon is roughly 60,000, maybe 50, right? Let's say 50, just for argument's sake. If we're low, we're low. $50,000 vehicle financed over 6 years is a $1,000 payment per month.
Yeah.
Okay. How much did I just say I'm into this Yukon for? 13? Yep. When this is done?
Yep, 13.4.
And this leaves me with a Yukon that has heated seats, front and back.
Yep.
All daytime running lights, bells and whistles, and I put the radio with the wireless Android Auto in it.
Yeah.
And CarPlay, right? I'm all into this thing for about, I think, 13.4, because I was in it for 12. I just put 1,400 into it.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm 13.4. Let's say I got to put another 1,600 into it, which I don't think I'm going to have to. I'll be into it for 15. Okay? That means for 15 months of a brand new car payment, I'm fully at break even with this thing.
Yeah.
And I've been driving this thing somewhat broken for the first 12 months.
Yeah.
Because I got it in February.
And most people aren't repairing what you're repairing right now. Your average person's not doing any of that.
Right.
The average person doesn't even know what the oil pressure gauge is.
Right.
It's just one of those small gauges on the top.
Yeah.
The shutter, they probably aren't noticing it. You're just more attuned to the car itself.
I am. I've gone into this with the mindset of I'm refurbishing the vehicle. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing things way before they need to be done. Just because I plan on keeping it, even though I had that moment where I put it for sale out of frustration.
Bad moment.
It was a real bad moment. I got over it. It's not for sale anymore. It's, I don't know how to put it. Again, for 15,000, and I'm not into it for 15,000, but for 15 months worth of a brand new car payment, my car is going to be paid off.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have a car that's the same size. I'm not going to give two shits about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I got paint peeling off of it. I can see gray metal on parts of it. I don't care.
Yeah.
You want to know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do exactly what I did with the roof of the thing.
Spray paint it.
I'm going to get a can. I'll wet sand it. I'll get it nice and prepped. I'm going to mask it off, and I'm going to do my own paint job on it. Mm-hmm. And you want to know what? That roof looks fine.
Yeah.
I didn't buff it. If I would have buffed it so that you don't, so you didn't see the line from where I did and what I didn't do, you would never have known.
Right.
Never have known. In fact, now, I think if you looked at it now it's all faded, I don't think anyone would know.
Yeah.
Unless they really looked hard, right?
Especially no one's looking up there anyway.
No one's looking up there. And don't worry, I got some
Like, unless you're best friends with like Yao Ming,
right, which I'm not.
When he's getting into the back of your car because you moved the front seat so his legs have somewhere to go.
Which, by the way, like, having that car. So since we got the dog, who's 100 pounds, by the way, he barely fits in my wife's car. He won't fit in my little Chevy. We need that car to take him anywhere. Now, granted, I still have to lift his 100-pound ass into it because for some reason his back legs don't want to jump.
Yeah.
Riddle me that, Batman. Like, this stupid dog, he loves being in the car, but won't jump into it.
So you gotta like deadlift his ass in there?
Yes. I have to squat his ass in. And like, apparently, like, we didn't know this though. We of course, now on Instagram, my wife and I are looking at golden videos. And apparently it's like a thing where like, they just don't do it.
Yeah.
We're not doing this.
Right.
They're like, fuck, we didn't think about this beforehand?
You know, then you see other dogs like a Malinois like launching itself at people like a missile.
Just like a rocket in the back of the car. I'm looking at that dog going, fuck you, dog.
Yeah. What's your problem?
Right, I'm looking at him. You see what he did? Well, like, we put treats in the thing. Like, we got the treat right by nose range.
Just out of rate. Like, he has to get up in there to get it.
He won't do it.
Yeah.
He puts the paws up. Looks
like,
back at us like, what are you guys doing?
Nah. Hey, that's not close enough, asshole.
But you know, we put him in the back of that, and he's got room.
Yeah.
So, and look, I had to put a few kids back there. It's really been efficient. And even for me to go get a brand new minivan or a used minivan, when I was looking, a used minivan was $18,000.
Right.
A used Yukon was $25,000-$30,000.
And that was probably...
That was 120,000 miles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have more miles on this thing. Yes, it's older. But the end, as long as you make sure the body's in good shape, the engine's in good shape, the transmission's all right, which we now know is. Even if it needs the torque converter done. Again, that's what would push me up to 15,000.
Yeah.
I'm not saying... No, I've had 3 mechanics look at that, all telling me it's fine.
Yeah.
And they said, look, if you're feeling it, we're not... Like, they weren't saying it wasn't happening, right? But they're saying, look, we haven't been able to recreate it. They said, drive it. If it gets worse, if the torque converter goes... I mean, the very worst scenario is it could take out the transmission with it. Mm-hmm. But even a torque converter and transmission, you can pick them up for $1,000.
Yeah.
Like, I asked the mechanic, I was like, what would I be into it for? And he said, probably about $3,000 total with labor. Mm-hmm. With a reman transmission. I was like, okay.
Because those transmissions are still, what are they?
They're weak.
4-speed?
They're 4-speed with overdrive.
So,
and then they're weak.
Yeah. But you know, the thing is, you're not talking about, like, so I drove a F-150, like the new F-150, it has a 10-speed transmission.
Yeah.
Like, you're not replacing a 10-speed you're replacing, what is that, I forget the LE whatever, you know, transmission, I forget what they put in those things, but they're everywhere. Like, they probably put the same transmission in full-size Chevy Express vans and...
Oh, yeah. So, so on the 6.0...
Silverados, all, like...
On the 6.0, it's a 4L65E.
Yeah.
And on the 4.8s and the 5.3s, they're 4L60s. Mm-hmm. 4L65 just got some beefed up components.
Yeah.
But it's basically the same transmission. You can go on Facebook right now. There's 7 of them listed for sale within 10 miles. Mm-hmm. And they've all been rebuilt with the better components than what's already in there.
Yeah.
So it'll last longer than the original. Now, this one already got replaced. This one got replaced when, I think, 40,000 miles ago.
Yeah.
If it goes, it goes. I'm still going to be ahead of the game with this thing. As long as the body doesn't rust out, that's when I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
When the body rusts.
Yeah.
Or even if the interior starts to... I mean, at some point, though, you're like, okay, well, when do you stop putting money into it? People are like, oh, well, the dollar signs seem to be adding up. I get you. But let's say... What did we say originally? When I bought the car, I said, how many years did I say I wanted? 3?
Yeah.
If I get this car for 3 years for $15,000...
You're winning.
I'm way ahead of the game. Because think about it, for 36 months, on a brand new one, for the lowest tier model, you just paid $36,000.
Yeah.
Guess what? I paid less than half of that. And I got the same 3 years and the same size vehicle.
Yeah.
I win.
And you're not even getting into the, what is it, LS. So a Tahoe LS or I forget the, whatever GM use, SL would be the lowest trim level.
Yeah. SLE.
SLE's the
for GMC.
Yeah, it's like the LTZ. So Chevrolet is LS, LT, LTZ. Mm-hmm. So a Suburban LS or a Tahoe LS, you're not even touching that thing for less than 55.
Yeah. Like I said, I think 50 was low.
That's probably rear-wheel drive.
Yeah.
It's not even four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
So, at that point, I mean, you get a fleet of them. Buy one and then buy one for parts.
Well, yeah, and that's why, like, when we were talking about this years ago, that's why I kept telling people, it's like, look, the financials make sense if you're willing to put up a little bit of a headache. Because don't get me wrong, it's been at the mechanic for a little while. I mean, at one point it was there for like over a month.
But it's your third vehicle, so you're good.
Correct. Absolutely. But okay, so out of 13, 14 months, I've had it for 12. Okay. And every time I get in, it starts right up. I haven't had it. And even when I thought it was broken, it was still driving perfectly fine for what I needed it for. I wasn't taking it on 2-hour rides, but around town for carpooling, for getting the dog around, for doing whatever I needed to do around town, it got me from point A to point B with a huge ass SUV that I needed. Yeah, for less than it would have cost me for a minivan, for less than it would have cost me for a used SUV, for what it would have. I mean, I couldn't get a Pilot. I couldn't get a Highlander. Like, this was back when cars were expensive as hell. Yeah. And they still kind of are. So, I mean, the only thing I would say is, if you're willing to put up a little bit of a headache, for me, those GMT 800s are the way to go. Not the 900s. Yeah. But the 800s.
And the 800s just look, it's such a nice looking truck.
Part of me, and I've said this to you before, part of me kind of wishes I would have went with the XL. Get the granddaddy on them. But you know what? In reality, this is probably just fine.
For 95% of what you do, you're fine.
Yeah. The other part was just because I thought the other one looked cooler. Yeah. A little part of the vanity. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm probably going to put some rims on this thing. But I think that's probably the last thing I'm going to do.
You should put some big, obnoxious 36-inch.
Some of the pictures I've seen are like 26, 28-inch rims. There's like no tire on it. Like, the tire's a sliver.
So you take... I never understood that. So, because people do it to Escalades all the time.
It drives like
shit. The Cadillac Escalade is one of the nicest riding vehicles you can buy. So then you take it, and you take the factory wheels off of it, and you put these ridiculous rims with rubber band tires and completely destroy the ride. But it's not like you're destroying the ride for performance. So say you had like a BMW 5 Series, right? And you didn't like the higher profile tires. You didn't quite have money for an M5. So you say, you know what? I'm going to tighten the suspension up, and I'm going to put bigger rims on it with some low pro tires because I want it to handle better. So yeah, it handles a lot better. You sacrifice some ride quality, but it's a sedan. I get it. It computes, right? But doing it to an Escalade, it just doesn't compute. It doesn't compute with the Escalade as much as jacking up a Corvette doesn't compute.
Right.
Like, I've got this Escalade with big, stupid rims and skinny tires. Or a Corvette that's got a body lift and 36-inch swampers on it. Right. It makes no sense. Like, why would you do that?
Right. Wrong car, wrong purpose.
Yeah, but they do it. Like, and even the stock GMT 800s ride smooth as hell. Like, it's trucky, but it's still smooth.
So for me, it's a little bouncy.
Yeah.
Right, but not bouncy in a truck kind of
way. You're not getting slammed. It's not like you're not feeling, like you're driving an old Ryder truck.
No, and to be honest with you, a lot of the bounciness is probably from the wheel and tire combination. It's 265 75 R17s. It's a chunky sidewall.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's squishy.
Oh, it's rolling all the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
it's like sitting in an old couch.
Right. So I think if I put 265 55 R20s, which is essentially, it's the same diameter from edge of the tire, end of the tire, but it's going to be less squishy and probably going to ride. It's still going to ride soft and comfortable because it's still going to be air ride.
Yeah.
I'm not lowering it because when you lower it, it alters the geometry and it ruins things. Now, don't get me wrong. Would I like to? Sure. It looks better. I think they look awesome lowered.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. I'll probably do the 20-inch rims first. Just see how it
looks. And where they look good lowered, the one complaint I have with the aesthetics of the GMT 800s is the fender gap on the rear axle. It's like a foot between the tire and the fender.
Yeah.
If you could compress that a little bit, and it's just the way the truck is designed, I get it, but it's everything else looks so nice. It's like he couldn't have done anything about that.
Well, oddly enough, there's a 2-inch difference between the front and the rear. Mm-hmm. So even if you just lowered the rear 2 inches, you now have it flat.
Yeah. Rather
than lifted in the butt. And that's what a lot of people do. They'll flatten it. And so they won't touch the front. They'll lower the rear. Mm-hmm. And that's how they run it. Now, some people will lower the front 1 inch and lower the rear 3. Mm-hmm. So it's still not level. It's still a little bit cockeyed. No, actually, at that point, it would be level. Because you lowered the rear 2 more than the front. And you get lower front, a little bit lower rear, but it doesn't look slammed with a 1.3.
Right.
2.4 does. But that's just me. I think that doesn't tie into our
No, I don't know how you're going to segue back at all to that.
I just did by saying it didn't segue at all.
Yeah. Like, you know.
Are we is this the great, I don't want to say greatest generation because I will always reserve that for the World War II generation. But we're also the generation where we haven't had, like, you're just starting to see politicians get into office in their early to mid 40s. Mm-hmm. And it's generally the kind of the rabble rousers a little bit. The people that don't take shit off of nobody on both sides. Mm-hmm. But we haven't seen a president. Like, Obama was not a Gen X.
When was Obama born?
He was a baby boomer.
Okay.
I believe he's in his 60s or late 50s right now. So he was...
As long as he was born prior to 65.
Not boomer, I'm sorry. He was... I think he was born in the 50s or 60s. Whatever generation that is.
Yeah, that's boomer.
Is it? Yeah, boom. Maybe silent?
Silent would be older than our parents. So he's definitely he's a young boomer.
So does boomer... So I thought there was something between boomer and...
World War II?
Early... No.
No, there's
boomer in 70s.
There's nothing between boomer and Gen X. Some people say there's young boomers.
Okay.
And then if you had Gen X and then Zennials would be the smaller split.
So so boomers are what?
60? Boomers are 45 to what was it?
68.
64.
Okay. So Gen X starts in the late 60s?
1965.
Oh, geez, okay. I don't know why I thought Gen X kind of start. So I guess maybe that Zennial thing is for that late 70s, early 80s. Exactly.
Okay. Zennial would be kind of like 78, or even some people would say 79 to pretty much anyone we would have went to high school with.
Gotcha. Okay. Now
would be so if you went to high school. So let's see, I graduated in 97. So anyone who was in high school from 1993 until 2001 would kind of be your Zennial group because grew up without technology being really prevalent, but then adapt like the early adapters.
Gotcha.
Fully capable and comfortable with it, understands, not sitting there like we can text. We don't start our texts like with, as I've received from some people who were like in my parents' generation, "Dear Mike,"
right.
comma.
It's a formal letter in text form.
Yeah. Sincerely yours, Mom.
Yes.
Like I haven't gotten I don't get those from my friends.
Yes.
So, or when you see like one of your like aunts or uncles or something like I've texted relatives of mine and be like, "Hey, get your mom off Facebook." Like,
They had it with all the best.
yeah.
No.
Like,
You don't have to do that.
I said, hey, is your mom on Facebook again? Huh? Like one of my cousins, she said, call me. Like, let me know if you see, like, like, let me know.
If you see these shenanigans, let me
Hey,
know.
your mom's like essentially it's kind of like the people who respond to the name a state that doesn't have an E in it. And like they're like, oh, like, or what's your favorite movie? Like, dude, there's been 46 million responses to this. That post was not to you.
Right.
Oh, well, I saw it on my Facebook, and that must be for me.
It was on the Facebook.
Yeah.
It was on the line.
Right. And
Online? Yeah. On the line.
And the funny thing is, like, Facebook is not the thing that the young kids are doing now. It's...
Nah. They're all Snapchat, Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think they probably... TikTok, I think, has taken over.
They don't even give phone numbers. They, like, what's your Snap?
Yeah.
Like... And the thing is, like, people bitch about some of these kids, and I get it. And I don't supervise them directly. They're below me on the totem pole, but... And they bitch about them, and I get caught up in it, like, oh, back in the day, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, dude, we need them a lot more than they need us. Nobody's coming to work right now,
right.
You know?
Right.
And so the ones that are, you're like, well, at least you're here. I'll give you that, you know? And it's one of those where, like, you'll hear boomers say, oh, when I was your age, I owned a house. Yeah, because it cost $5,000 when you bought it. And it cost $500,000 because you assholes fucked everything up. So I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for them when they're starting, when I was your age, fuck you. You know, right, when you were my age, a house didn't cost $500,000. A person could go to college and come out without being $300,000 in debt. Like, all these things that they started. It was decisions that they were in charge when they're starting to retire and move out, but they were the ones running the show. So I don't really, so that's where I really kind of sympathize with millennials and Gen Z, because they kind of are, people think like, oh, well, why you still live in your mom's basement? Because a 2-bedroom apartment is $3,500 a month. And I wouldn't want my kid pissing that kind of money away on rent. Like, no, stay in the basement. It makes sense.
I mean, just in our area alone, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, $1,800 a month.
That's a steal.
Well, that's crazy to me.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
That's
you can't make
right around my mortgage payment.
Well, you can't make $34,000 a year and pay that.
No,
you're gonna be house poor.
Yeah, apartment poor.
Yeah, right. You won't even have a lawn.
Yeah,
and I get that, and that doesn't even include. It's just
wages have stagnated. They've been stagnant since the 70s. Sure, do I make a lot more money than my dad did when my dad was my age? Absolutely.
Me too. Yep.
But that money doesn't go nearly as far. So
the house, I have about the same size house as my parents did when I grew up. They bought that house for roughly $200,000. I believe the actual price is $205,000. The latest house, and I'm not saying this is what I paid for my house, but the latest house of similar size in our neighborhood sold for $675,000. That's like times 3.
Oh yeah,
like 300% increase. Mm-hmm. Wages didn't go up by 300% in 20 years. I'm sorry, they haven't.
Yeah,
like my kids, as much as I don't want them to live at home after school or whatever, I'm probably going to encourage that they live at home for at least 4 years, and I'm going to make sure they bank as much cash as they can.
Yeah. What I might do, I'll do something that my buddy's mom did for his sister, not for him because he was a fuck up, but she charged her daughter rent.
Yeah.
And then just banked it.
Well,
and then when she said, hey, I'm thinking about moving out, like, okay, well, remember all that rent you were paying me?
Yeah.
I've been putting, and this lady was a financial planner. She knows what she's doing. I've turned into X amount, and here it is, plus the interest.
Or another thing I might end up doing is I might end up buying a condo for the kids to live in, put them both in it, and then gift it to them.
Yeah.
So that essentially would work out to be their first home purchase.
Yeah.
And
I have friends in college whose parents bought an off-campus house.
Yeah.
And then charged rent. The rent from the roommates paid the mortgage, so their kids lived there for free. It was essentially their kids got free room from living off campus.
That's how you kind of got to do it, but it got infinitely tougher. Like when I first did it, when I was 22, I bought a duplex, but I bought it for $97,000.
Yeah.
And I used the first time buyer program in New York. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm comparing two different environments, two different places, right?
Yeah.
Like I was in upstate New York. That's rural.
Yeah.
But and maybe that's where we tell some of these kids to go. Go to a more rural area. Mm-hmm. Maybe not necessarily remote work, but think about it. If you're a teacher and starting pay is somewhere like $35,000 out in West Virginia, but you can buy a house for $150,000, $200,000.
Yeah.
Versus starting pay around here is $40,000 to $45,000, but a house is $400,000, $500,000. Mm-hmm. You can't afford to live where you work.
No, the teacher doesn't make shit.
But
anywhere.
If you go somewhere where the cost of living is less,
right,
the gap lessens.
Yeah.
Right. But that being said, I mean, a little off topic, and I wanted to do one more thing. I wanted to fanboy a little bit.
Okay.
So we may have replied to a tweet by Jimmy Dore, and he may or may not have replied to that tweet. And it wasn't like glowing for us. It was more of like a shot at us.
But it wasn't mean.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't like, like there was some shade, but it wasn't. It was an argument that would have made against our own point anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. And he made a counterpoint.
Yeah.
Just to say like he liked the devil, the other devil than the one we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right. And my thing was saying like it was basically about healthcare, and I was like, look, we're pro universal healthcare. I just don't trust the government to do it properly.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying, well, the private healthcare models worked out real well.
Yeah.
Like that was only his thing. Like which I don't disagree with.
Yeah.
But I did think it was kind of cool that he kind of replied to a tweet.
And I listen to Jimmy Dore every Friday.
Right. Yeah. No. I listen. Yeah. I listen.
He's actually reduced. He's actually putting out more episodes. I think he's putting like 2 or 3 out a week now for free.
Is he doing? I haven't watched it in like the last couple weeks. He had Greg Jardula doing a lot of them for a while there. Mm-hmm. I guess he was on the road, so he had Craig doing them. Has he come back to doing them? I think he was trying to get some other people in the seat.
Yeah. To
maybe expand the Jimmy Dore empire a little bit.
But I love on Fridays when he has the phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the phone rings. It's President Joe Biden. Who the fuck do you think it is, numbnuts? Which is probably how he actually talks. Like that's probably like unfiltered when he's like with it. State of the Union was on tonight, so just little.
You want to know what though? There was no shot I was going to watch it. Oh, because by the way, Trump was going to do a live tweet response, like while he was doing it. Which
if we could have figured out how to sync, we could have given our play-by-play.
I know, right?
But then it could be a lot of just dead air of us watching it.
It was going to be gibberish and more gibberish.
Yeah,
it was going to be gibberish and insults. That's what it was going to be.
Right.
And do I really want to watch that? Like I already know. Like if I already know how the movie goes, do I really want to watch it?
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Like you know how Titanic ends.
Yeah, and like I just don't like. I know the Democrats that are in the chamber are going to applaud at everything,
and the Republicans aren't.
The Republicans aren't. The only thing was one of them going to jump up and yell some shit out, and get booed. I don't know. I don't really care.
And then they're all going to wear like some group of them will all wear white or all wear pink.
They're going to wear some. What was it? They wore some like African scarf that one time. Like
that was
wow.
So a buddy of mine who's West African looked at that.
Yeah.
And we were talking. He goes, "You know that those." He actually used the proper term, and I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. Essentially, that pattern. He said, "You know what that is, right?" I said, "I imagine it's I have no idea. It doesn't say New York Rangers on it. I can tell you that much.
It doesn't. It's not for white people.
Yeah,
right."
So he said those colors, that pattern is Ashanti. I said, "Okay." The singer.
Nice,
like,
right.
This is how ignorant I am.
Rest in peace, right? You know, because she died.
Yeah. He's like, no, the Ashanti tribe. I said, okay. He goes, well, the Ashanti tribe are the ones who were essentially the point of contact for the European slave traders. And it's like, oh.
Oopsie.
Yeah. So, it would be, like, I can't draw a comparison without offending a whole bunch of people, but, like, that was, it's like your virtue signal is so bad. Like, you fucked up your virtue signal.
Yeah.
And watching a bunch of old white people kneel who enacted all the legislation that's keeping it, it's like, fuck you.
Like, sorry we put you all in jail.
Yeah.
I love you now, though.
Yeah. Now that we can get your vote, you know? But it's like, you motherfuckers, fuck you. So, we have an explicit tag on this episode.
Yeah, no kidding. But we always do.
Yeah.
I think I've been putting that on for like the last 2 years. I think the first year I didn't put it on there, and someone was like, hey, there's some words in there.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
So if your kids are in the car, my apologies.
Don't listen.
Yeah.
We probably should say this before the episode ends.
Yeah.
If you got kids in the car, don't listen. But thanks for listening, and please rate us on on all the podcast platforms. We want to thank Adam Chubbuck from Team Alpha Charlie, Douglas Realty, in Pasadena. Head to our website at drivewaybeerspodcast.com to get his information. Their website is www.tacmd.com. That's TACMD.com. Reach out to Adam. Really good person. Navy vet, by the way. Just a cool dude. I enjoyed talking to him. Appreciated the conversation. We're going to hem out sometime, talk about real estate and finance. Just to kind of, we were talking about real estate before, and we had been talking about real estate in the past, but we have never brought on a real estate financial expert. And it's probably about time that we did. So probably in the next month or so, we'll bring Adam on and we'll get him to talk about the current real estate market. We thank you for listening as always. Talk to you soon. Take care.